So it's such a pleasure to be here. I just have to say, it's really impressive to me, having created this thing long ago, how much of the DNA has been retained, and what a great job Andrew and his people are doing. So with that said, I'm very happy to be talking about a super important topic. And I want to just quickly tell you a little bit about each of the panelists so they can further their own ideas if they'd like. But all of these people are really thinking hard about what kind of person we need to become in the age of AI. And they've all actually been, in one way or another, changing what they do in real time very recently. So for example, Hadi founded code.org 13 years ago. But the very day I interviewed him to prep for this session, they changed the name of the organization to Code AI. So he's going to tell us why. Tade, who started Campus, how many years ago did you start Campus?
2022.
22. Campus is a college, which actually is a startup, but it actually bought a community college. And among other things, this year, only a few months ago, it also bought a company called Sizzle, which does AI-based education. So another rapid change happening in his company. And he's got a lot of interesting things he's doing with the big model makers, including the one that was just on stage. Karin was the founder of Bloomberg Beta, which is Bloomberg's venture capital arm. Pretty much from the beginning, Bloomberg Beta has focused on the future of work as a theme, a primary theme in its investing work. And Karin has, a lot of background in training, software and education sort of things. But she's also doing some work with 92-year-old Gloria Steinem, which we're going to hear about. Anyway, so I wanted to start out with a general question for anybody to jump on. Why are graduates booing speakers who mention AI? How about you?
Look, I think thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Look, it's really simple. I think we don't have trust in the institutions anymore. I think, you want young people to trust the people who kind of screwed up COVID and who screwed up, social media, and who've got all the young people super anxious with the biggest change to the way the economy is going to work since the Industrial Revolution. And it's like, I think the model companies and Silicon Valley as a whole has to shift from saying, hey, this is going to be really great someday. Hey, this is going to help us cure cancer faster. Hey, this is going to create new jobs, to no. Today, this is how this is being used to advance, drug discovery. Today, here are the new jobs. Forward deployed engineers, I'm sure we'll talk about that. Forward deployed, AI transformation specialists. Here are the new opportunities that are coming right now. And I think if we can make that shift, then the young people will feel a little bit differently. But they're just not gonna take a trust me, bro.
Are you trying to contribute to that shift in the work you're doing concretely?
Yeah, I think we have to. I think that the government's likely to be far too slow. I'm curious for everyone else's perspective, but to really help manage this transition. And I think you've got this sort of somewhat disingenuous engine of hatred for AI, which is every guy who overhired or who otherwise just wants to lay off 8,000 people is going to blame AI for why it's happening, whether or not it's true. And so I think every young person who can't get a job or every person who just got laid off is a seed of AI hatred that's getting planted. And you're going to need a a commensurately large number of people who attribute great things to AI today.
A seed of AI hatred. We don't want too many of those, probably. But it's interesting, the title of this session is Learning to Love the Machine, and I'm curious if that's really a possibility at the moment. No, you don't think so? Say something more about that. Say something more about that.
I mean, I think we should learn how to harness AI to its max potential, but learning to love the machine, I think it's, I'm not sure anybody really has that as a personal goal.
Right. On the other hand, you are very optimistic about what AI is going to make possible in the big picture, right?
I'm an optimist, but I'm also a cautious optimist. I mean, I think we're living in a time where some people are just saying it's all good, and then there's other people saying it's the Terminator and it's going to kill us. I would say I'm in the middle, meaning this technology has enormous potential, but we also shouldn't just blindly assume it's only going to work out well. It also has enormous potential for cyber hackers or terrorists or fraudsters or so on. And I think also one of the most important things we should think of when people are just worried about the future of the economy, the future of jobs, we could debate whether AI is good or bad, but the thing that's not under debate is people should understand it more deeply and should not just think it's like this magic thing that's being created from above. It's something that's created by humans, and so everybody should be participating in that creation process.
So he's focusing on vocational education. You're focusing on K through 12 education and have for many years. So what needs to change in K through 12 education given the era we're entering, and why did you change the name of your organization?
That's a great question. By the way, first I should say that Tade and I discovered backstage that we are identical twins.
Yep.
So if you have trouble
They're both from twins.
Yeah, if you can't tell us apart, he's the older twin.
Not only
I'm
are
the
their
younger
names
twin.
similar, but yeah.
Yeah, but I'm focusing on K through 12 education, and Code.org for the last 13 years has been built on the promise or the vision that every student should have the opportunity to learn computer science, not because you want to get a job as a coder, but to understand the technology that's changing our world. And we are still teaching foundational computer science in high schools and in middle school, but the shift of computer science is that computer science has been about coding, and now it's much more about AI. And so looking to the future, every student needs to understand, how does AI work? So it's not just like this magic machine, understanding the math and the statistics behind it, the training, the ways it can make mistakes, and then learning how to harness AI to create new technology, to make us all creators, and then lastly, to learn how to use it responsibly. This is the most powerful technology that mankind has ever created, and anybody has access to that power, and schools should give everybody this sense of like, don't just rush headlong into creating something, because any student can create a virus that takes down lots of things. People should think more responsibly about it as well. And all of those belong in the K through 12 system.
And I would add just one more point to that is the critical thinking piece. And that's the part that's been so deceptively simple. When we use AI, we kind of start to miss some of that. And so making sure we hang in there with that rigor to really work through the problems and not always take the shortcut. I did a talking circle last week focused on future workers with Dr. Becky, who's a parent family psychologist, and she gave this great example about you have an opportunity to walk with your child 2 miles to a store, and maybe it will take an hour and a half. Along the way, you discover a new art installation, you meet neighbors, you have to figure out your path. Somebody turns to you and says, oh, hey, I can get you there in 3 minutes. Do you take that walk with your child? Well, we need to do more of those where we're hanging in the problem and really making sure we're figuring out how to solve it.
Yeah,
and so K through
absolutely.
12, starting early on that would be really helpful.
Well, and you're very worried that AI is going to leave a lot of society behind, right?
So I'm a long-term optimist. I'm a venture capitalist. You got to be, right? And I just think we have to take more responsibility and be motivated to learn about it, like Tade and Hadi are saying. And so the people that concern me that I think need to lean in a little bit more and that we as a society need to figure out some solutions for are, we see massive changes that are on the horizon, right? Like it doesn't take a visionary to understand where autonomous cars and trucks are going. And I think we just need to find other types of roles and responsibilities for people where there's meaningful work.
Okay. I wanted to make sure you made clear, though, you don't think kids should stop studying coding, even though they need to understand how AI works and the philosophy behind it, right?
So I would say something a little bit more subtle than that. First of all, AI can read, and it can write, and it can do math. And so we don't say, oh, now that AI can do those things, we should stop teaching reading or writing and math because AI can do it. Just the idea that AI does something doesn't mean that humans should stop learning it. But when it comes to coding, there's parts of coding that involve critical thinking, logical thinking, planning. That part is called computational thinking, is the computer science term for it. That is really, really important. But learning where do the semicolons go and closing, like which kind of bracket or parentheses should I use, That's really much, much less important. And nobody needs to know that in high school. It's not going to be relevant in their later stage lives.
Just to get out of the way a few of the mechanics of what you're doing, you've spent a lot of the time in the last 13 years advocating for policy in states and 80 countries. And you said that every state that now mandates, and all states have some form of computer science mandate now. And you've worked with every single one of those 50 states in order to get to that place, and you've worked with 80 countries. So is that what we need to do with AI now?
Yes. So first of all, we've not been mandating coding. My organization has been called code.org, and for 13 years I've had to explain that we're teaching computer science.
Yes.
Is
that what I said? I did say computer science.
Yes, yeah, you did.
Okay.
You did. But our curriculum, because it's like in middle schools, is not teaching students, Java programming in middle school. It teaches dragging and dropping blocks, learning how to build things, but much more conceptually. All of that is relevant, and now today we need to add on top of that learning how AI works and learning how to use AI for creating things.
Good. Karin, you were the first money into campus, and I know one of the reasons why that company excites you so much is that you really believe we need to get to truly personalized education. So talk a little bit about, based on your experience with campus and your other portfolio companies and a lot of the other work you're doing, how we're doing in getting to that.
So, AI has made it possible for us to have personalized education, but one of the things that's so extraordinary about Tade's model is that it also has live experience, and so people are still learning from each other. We're social people, and that's going to be really important in this love of the machine era. We need to have community, and Tade brings that to each of his students.
Absolutely. If you think about the way I think learning is shifting given AI, two things that are very, very obvious trends are already starting to pan out. The first is the era of learn once and then you're done for life is over. If there's one thing that AI is it's very clear. You just heard from the previous panel. We're on the verge of recursive self-improvement, meaning GPT 5.9 is going to be better at creating 6.0 and 7.0 and 8.0 than humans would be, or at least largely it's going to be on them. So we're going to have this exponential takeoff. So what does it mean? Well, it means that all of the work you guys are doing right now within your orgs to figure out how to deploy AI, I'm sorry if you're exhausted. You're going to have to do that every year for the rest of your careers ad infinitum. Okay, it's like that's the new norm. In the same way as you have HR departments or you have finance departments, you're going to have some sort of continuous learning, continuous development, continuous evaluation departments within every organization so that you can adapt and grow and improve your efficiency and grow faster at the rate of the AI model improvements. The companies that don't figure out how to do that are going to be left behind. And it's the same thing with learners. The four-year university, and then you just sort of figure it out as you go, that's going to be over. I think we're moving closer to something like a gym membership, where it's like everyone in New York wants to be hot and fit for the summer, and they all go 2 to 3 hours a week to the gym. If you want to be the equivalent of hot and fit in your career, you're going to have to spend 2 or 3 hours a week learning how to use the most recent advances in AI.
So that's a future direction for campus beyond the traditional 2-year community college
Absolutely.
model?
We're already seeing it. We're testing these things internally. Sort of we can see the sort of the paradigms that are working, and we're going to be rolling out a lot of that stuff more broadly. And then I think the second thing that is new is, as Karin was alluding to, personalization. If you think about a university today, you have students coming into, let's say, Calculus 1, and they have completely different levels of prerequisite understanding, in terms of algebra or just like all the other prerequisite knowledge. And then they go through the same exercises, the same assignments, the same quizzes, the same structures, which makes no sense. If someone did really, really well in a prerequisite, maybe they can skip through 30% of the class and get to the harder stuff, versus someone who has lots of gaps and holes that need to get plugged before they can really grapple with the material in a meaningful way. And so AI allows us to actually have the intelligence to measure every student's understanding, sort of map it with really sort of atomic level understanding of what they know and don't know, and then create personalized pathways through the curriculum. And what does it mean? It means you could probably teach people about 5 times faster. And so when we bought Sizzle, Sizzle was started by Meta's head of AI, a guy called Jerome Pacenti, did really well at Meta and wanted to spend the rest of his life helping people learn with AI instead of AI that just helps you spend more time on Instagram. And so he's sort of built the best technology.
Which it will do, but go on. Yeah.
Which it's already been doing. And so he built the best technology to really help assess, measure people's understanding, and then create dynamic pathways through any sort of arbitrary set of curriculum. And so we're rolling it out to our students, and yeah, we're already starting to see major compression in terms of how long it takes students to learn useful, complicated concepts.
I also think we need to start questioning what students should learn. Like you mentioned calculus. My guess is nobody here in this room uses calculus day to day, and no employer is like, almost no employer. Maybe it's SpaceX or a few places, but mostly nobody's hiring the calculus experts, but every student is struggling on like, I need to get really good at it for almost no purpose whatsoever.
Yeah.
Whereas employers want somebody who knows how to leverage the best AI and get ahead.
Wait, are you saying we shouldn't teach calculus? No.
I think it should be
Because
more
that's
optional.
a thinking generation. Isn't that also, to your point before, learning to think?
It is, but I'm not sure it should be mandatory the way it is. Or at least if you think about
I totally screwed it up, I will say. So it shouldn't be mandatory for people like me, I definitely would.
Think about how many people go through their lives as young people feeling like I'm not good enough because of calculus. And it doesn't really make an impact for them in the long run.
Okay. Karin, you've already,
I mean, it was a skill builder for me. It made me feel proud of myself
Well,
when I did well in AP
you're
calculus.
geekier. So,
It's an optional, right?
but you also have already on this panel made clear that this idea of taking a humane approach to this evolutionary moment we're in with AI in society is very important to you. Talk about some of the work you are doing along those lines and what this Gloria Steinem thing is and why you're doing that.
So at 92, Gloria's still learning. I taught her how to use AI about a year and a half ago. So we all have no excuses, right? And the hope is just that, and this is something you can take back to your companies, like we all learn differently. And Tade was talking about the personalized education. Well, when we're teaching to our teams and encouraging them to use AI, we have to use different instructions depending on the person that we're speaking with, and know that our workforce is going to have a different set of learners and design curriculum accordingly. I joined the board of Harvey Mudd many years ago. I'm no longer on the board, but part of the reason why I leaned in is because they found a way to have one of the most diverse and talented graduating engineering students. And so they did it by designing curriculum differently and making sure it was more readable and accessible to all. And I really want to see AI benefit all of us instead of just a few of us.
But specifically, what is the thing you're doing with Gloria? You're getting together groups of women to talk about what?
Yeah, so it's called a talking circle, and it's a sacred practice brought to Gloria through her friendship with Cherokee Chief Wilma Mankiller. And it's really a great strategy for companies where you sit around and it could be a boardroom table or something that's ideally more circular, and you talk about a topic, and everyone is equal in their contributions. The goal is to listen more than you speak and to cite examples instead of theory. And it ultimately, you don't necessarily, it's a meandering path sometimes, but you get to great results. And as a result of it, like some of the leaders have gone back to their companies, redesigned training programs, started Claude and Coffees where they share learnings on how they're adopting and using AI, and really made people realize that there are great leaders and people experimenting across companies, and so you find kinship with people.
You're using a really old-fashioned, time-tested way of ideating for the latest ideas.
Yeah, as Gloria says, it's an untech way to advance AI.
Yeah, great. Okay. You guys, we got 3 minutes to go, so I really probably should go to the hand. I just saw a hand, didn't I? Okay. I've got great questions remaining on this Fortune-provided iPad, but let's quickly go to this person here. Is there a mic coming to the, okay, here it comes. And don't definitely identify yourself, please.
Hey, David. Rick Chavey, Viex. We talked earlier today.
Yeah, but it's not what I know, it's what they know.
Yeah,
You have an enterprise software company. Okay.
Yes, exactly. And I'm curious, particularly with Tade talking about the education market and how it's evolving, and him maybe seizing the day on some of that. But how do you think of yourself in terms of competing like against a 2U you know, the massive online education kind of market that sprung out of MIT EDX. And do you see that as going beyond that in terms of not just students, but also maybe business learning or people that aren't even students that want to learn things? You know, how do you see that evolving? And maybe from Karen's point of view too, the investment in that kind of market, is that a market that's going to take off?
Sure. Look, I think three things.
Briefly.
Yeah, live online classes is super important. Two, we are an actual college, so anything you learn at campus, you know, we have students who are at UCLA and they're taking summer classes as us, and then they transfer those credits back into UCLA, so we're an actual college. And then three, I think the gap between what's relevant and what schools are teaching is growing as fast as the AI models are changing what's relevant. And so unless sort of other colleges figure out how to do partnerships with the big models, big model companies as we are, so that you get 6 months access, you know, early access to their roadmap, and you can design curriculum before the tech even launches, you're just going to be way behind the 8 ball.
Okay, I want to go one more, or at least one more audience question, but I wanted to ask you something that was so interesting that you've got to talk about. You said we're shifting to a world of entrepreneurs with robot armies working for them. So just explain what that would mean, because it goes to the other side of this, which we're really not even discussing. Are there going to be jobs? And you think there are, but it's really more entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I have a sort of counter thought on this, because people are all worried about the future of jobs, but there's, you know, the questions I ask myself, and by the way, this isn't like an official position of Code AI, it's a personal point of view, is like, why do we have jobs? And you know, no 6-year-old or 7-year-old grows up thinking like, I really want a boss. I want to have somebody telling me what to do every day. That's not a core human need. What we want is food and shelter, safety, healthcare, love, friendship, community, purpose. Those are the real needs that we have. And jobs are the only way right now we have to get the money to buy the things that we actually need and want. And I believe with the growth of AI and robots, we're going to shift to sort of a prior time. If you look back 300 years ago, there were no such thing as jobs. The idea of a job was invented for the Industrial Revolution to harness labor. It used to be you'd be a shoemaker or a blacksmith or something like that, and you just do that thing for yourself for society. And then you got to this mode of building factories where you hire people to do a job because that's what the factory model of the Industrial Revolution expected. We're moving to a world where if you're an entrepreneur, maybe you and your co-founder will hire a whole army of robot AIs to do the coding for you, or or you know, humanoid robots. I think we're going to see a rise of entrepreneurship and a rise of harnessing AI to do things. And that doesn't mean that jobs will disappear, but maybe people will have fewer bosses and be the boss of themselves.
Yeah, I often think that, you know, it used to be so hard to learn how to do something new, to create a business, all the research you had to do. You can do that in a day or two now. So no matter what kind of business you want to start, it's way faster, but I lied. We can't take more audience questions. I apologize. We are over our time, but this has been great. We roared through our limited time. Thank you so much, all three of you.